Welcome to my show, When Everyone Wins, where a key goal I have for you is shifting from power over and under to power within and between. I'm your host, Judy Ryan. In each episode, I'll share my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWorks Systems. I'll help you build trust and emotional and social intelligence. My show, When Everyone Wins, is about creating a life you love and helping others do the same. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today with an episode on transformational leaders who create a win-win workplace. As many of you know, transformational leaders are passionately convicted about inspiring and motivating their people through healthy culture practices so that they can achieve meaningful, positive change and exceed expectations. The excellence that they create is a palpable thing in the relationships, the productivity, the engagement of their people and of them as leaders. Such leaders hold a compelling vision for developing leadership in everyone in the workforce, including themselves. They consciously promote creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking needed to ensure innovative solutions and a strong sense of meaning and purpose. My guests today are such transformational leaders. For the past 10 years, they have been committed to investing time and money in creating a healthy workplace culture. And they practice what they preach. They promote and model strong ethical principles, as well as the kind of integrity that builds mutual trust and mutual respect in their staff and with their customers. These guests are two of my favorite leaders ever. They adopted my LifeWorks Systems Culture EX model. It's an unconventional shared power culture transformation process that is not for the faint of heart. My guests know firsthand that helping people live from personal responsibility, internal motivation, and emotional and social intelligence is what strengthens their organization. They are both founding members of CMIT Solutions St. Louis, a managed IT services and cybersecurity provider. My guests are committed to their people. They onboard them with the promise of helping each to develop personally and professionally so that everyone supports wild success of each other. To do this, they have adopted and promote a common set of concepts, terms, tools, and support strategies from LifeWorks Systems Culture Model. I'm so happy to introduce these two transformational leaders to you today. First, meet Mike Minkler and Nick LaRosa. They are both founding partners and senior executives of CMIT Solutions of St. Louis. Mike Minkler is not only a founding partner, he's a managed IT service provider, cybersecurity expert, proactive technology specialist, and an employee culture leader. Before coming to CMIT, he has a background in strategic consulting for large enterprises. Mike has his management degree from Purdue University and his MBA from Washington University here in St. Louis. Nick LaRosa provides CMIT customers and their businesses with reliable, proactive IT solutions. He focuses on building strong, long-term relationships. Nick has over 25 years of practical experience in IT, almost 20 years in operations, and he's a Navy veteran. He recently became a best-selling author with a book that he co-wrote called Maximizing Business Potential with AI. Boy, we need that right now. In 2024 and again in 2025, CMIT has been recognized as one of the top IT firms and best places to work by St. Louis Small Business Monthly. They have also consistently ranked on Entrepreneur Magazine's Franchise 500 list for more than a decade. And ConnectWise named CMIT Solutions the Partner of the Year, the company's highest partner honor. And all of this, I know, is largely due to the leadership of Mike and Nick. Welcome to the show, Mike and Nick.
Great to be here, Judy. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm so excited to see your faces. So tell our audience about what made you prioritize culture at CMIT.
That's a great question. We get asked that all the time, right? What was the impetus, right, to drive you towards this journey? And um, as I reflect on it, 10 years ago, we had all the symptoms, right, of a dysfunctional culture that we didn't really understand how to identify or name at the time. But we were in a place of, lots of cynicism, negativity, uh, autocratic power, get in your seat and do what you're told as opposed to, being involved in sort of your own destiny and charting your own course
Yeah.
and shared power and all those things. So we had high turnover. I mean, that's, from an IT company perspective, we're big on math and metrics, and our turnover was very high. We were losing people that we wanted to keep. And that was a big problem that we had to solve. And that's what really got us started on the journey. We met you, and being IT people, it's like, oh, cool. Judy has this system that we can follow, this process, because we're always looking for the process and how we can, implement things. And doing culture change seemed like this black art to us. But when we met you, we realized, oh no, there's actually science and there's a process to this and tools. And we were very excited about that.
I love it that you called it a black art. There are still people to this day that think it's a black art. And, Mike, I love from the very outset how humble you were. Like, you didn't hide it all from yourself or from me. Like, we need help. And it's kind of like the alcoholic saying, first you got to get over the denial. So
Mm.
I really appreciate that about CMIT and about you. And Nick, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you remember feeling like, oh my God, we got to do something? Or where were you at with all of that?
Yeah, Judy, thank you. I really, it was interesting when Mike came into the office and we had a standing executive meeting, and he started talking about when he had met you at a function, and the concepts that he started bringing about actually hiring a culture expert to come in and help us. Uh, at first I was like, really, they got these out here? I mean, is that really a thing? Um, and then as we met you and we started talking about the program and everything, it made sense. It was an investment, and that was something that you got to sometimes take a leap of faith with.
Mhm.
But I think it's paid in spades for us. So I thank Mike for bringing it to the rest of us, and for you for helping us along for the last 10 years.
So, Nick, I want to continue with you. You said it's paid in spades. So, what are some of the most rewarding experiences that you would say have come from the culture change that you've put in?
Yeah, I think more robust personal relationships with everybody in the team is huge. When you come into an office and everybody's just quiet and they're doing their things and heads down and all that, but nobody's really interacting with each other. Um, you have people doing work, but you don't have a team, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's something that I've seen that really excites me is, we actually are working together. We're trying to build this wonderful company where the product may be IT, but the family is really the nuts and bolts of it, right? It's the things that help us enjoy what we do every day. Everybody wants to come into work and enjoy what they do, enjoy the people that they do it with.
Mhm.
And I think that's where it's really paid. I also think we really had solid figures around reducing turnover, right? So that's another way it paid in spades. Um, but just seeing, how we all try very hard to work together and have authentic relationships with each other is where I think it's paid off.
Has it helped you grow the business with clients and customers? Are there any places where you can see where the skills and the training kind of cross over into some of those relationships? Either of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think on really two different fronts that's had an impact. Number one is, we talk about retention, right? And that sounds kind of self-serving from a business owner's perspective. We look at that kind of as a financial sort of impact, but having a cohesive team together that's tenured, that knows your business, that we know each other and they get to know our clients. We're at the end of the day a professional services business built on relationships with our clients,
Mhm.
and having a culture that is shared power, and we have the tools, and we've learned things like psychological safety and emotional intelligence, that goes way beyond just our personal interactions in the office. It certainly extends out to our clients and creates a much more tighter bond and relationship with our clients, simply because we are better, honestly, at dealing with other humans and managing conflict. And even though potentially some of our clients aren't on, the same page with us from a shared power, personal responsibility continuum, it definitely helps us in, not having knee-jerk reactions to situations, and, reading sort of the feelings and being able to think about things like the 8 values that build trust. We'll probably talk about those at some point today. But that really, I think, helps us foster those relationships with our clients. So as a result, we don't have hard metrics around how that's helped our business grow, other than the fact that I know that we have clients that we've retained over longer periods of time as a result of having more tenured employees that know our business, maintain those relationships with our clients, and we're much better at dealing with the dynamics with customer relationships as a result of what our entire staff has learned.
Yeah, yeah. I remember one time hearing that, you and Nick had to go out of town and the kids were left at the office and they realized that they were being personally responsible. Do you have any other thoughts on some of the things that you realized, wow, this transformational shared power model, while it can be challenging, what some of the things that you've noticed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, it's the elimination of, and I mentioned this earlier, the negativity and the
Mhm.
cynicism. I
Yeah.
think we've really, sort of like internalized our own personal radars around that to catch ourselves when we might be slipping. Because let's face it, right? We're not perfect. We're not going to ever be perfect. There are times when we slip, right? Or we start to find ourselves, going into that dark place. And I think the ability for each of us to sort of recognize when that's happening and being able to either ask for help or pull ourselves out of that sort of world and think about personal responsibility and thinking about being in control of ourselves and managing ourselves, right? We learn a lot about that going through your model. I think that has had a significant impact on our culture, on our people, and the ability really to in large part eliminate things like gossip, eliminate things like drama that are huge time sucks, right? And they require, and we didn't have tools back when that was happening to be able to resolve those issues. We were fumbling blind through trying to deal with those types of issues. And now that we're on the other side, again, we're not perfect, but when we do get off course, we have tools. We know ways that we can deal with these types of situations, that we're not just trying to pull things out of thin air and invent ways to navigate some of these, sometimes challenging, difficult, conflict issues that we experience.
You know what? I appreciate so much what you're saying here, because really is true that most people, if they know better, they'll do better. And yet they think they're supposed to know better already without having been given that information. So it takes a certain kind of, I always think of you guys when I think of a powerful, positive ego. Because when you have a positive ego, you use your energy, you use your initiative to help people become more powerful themselves instead of feeling defensive and afraid of that. One of the things, though, that I know is kind of a danger of choosing a shared power model, and you talked a little bit about the risk of slipping. But one of the things is, as you reduce the dominating kind of energy, sometimes it's tempting or it's possible to slip into kind of some permissiveness.
Oh
Have
yeah.
you guys experienced any of that? And if so, what have you done to protect against it?
Um, Absolutely we have. I
Yeah.
would say we overcorrected. My background coming out of big corporate consulting was very much an autocratic leadership style. And I was the first person that had to address that, right? And realize, okay, in order to move to shared power, we've got to make some changes. And so we made those changes. And I think we went a little too far, right? We were concerned about getting as far away from that as we could. And as a result, we didn't know how to do things like, be firm and respectful at the same time, hold people accountable. That's a muscle that we had to develop, because when you move to a world where you do have shared power, and we very much have shared power, you do run the risk of finding that balance between, there's certain non-negotiables when it comes to employment, right? And being a member of a team. And sometimes these are simple things like you've actually got to go to work, right? And do things. But sometimes it's not as easy, right, to identify, where are those guardrails, right? There are boundaries. And that was a bit of a struggle for us, because before it was, do what I say, right? And that's easier in many ways from a management perspective.
Yeah.
So we did slip into, giving people an environment where they didn't have a lot of boundaries, which I think we recognize now that really not many people want to operate in that world, but
Right.
we overcorrected, I would say, and we had to learn to develop some of these new skills and capabilities that we didn't have before.
Yeah, there still has to be consequences, right? I mean, at some level, there's still consequences for having that autonomy.
Yeah, and when you've given them the skills and the tools and then they still don't rise, then the consequences kind of are on them
Right.
because you've done everything you know in your power. It's interesting because really shifting is about that balance between we're giving you a lot of freedom, but we're also giving you a lot of responsibility. Because if you have too much freedom, it does slip into permissiveness, and it is more about about anarchy sometimes.
Yeah.
And then if you go into that old school way, then it tends to be like a tyranny in a way at times. People become afraid of it's so divisive in a way. But I also see that you had to go through that process of bending the coat hanger. It was so much one way, and you had to overbend it to come to that middle ground. And it isn't easy, and it takes patience and making mistakes. And that's what I've loved about you guys. You guys have been on this for 10 years. You're continually improving, continually bringing things back to the center. So, just as the negativity and the cynicism can be contagious, so too can the feeling of, oh my gosh, I love my job. I love my workplace. All of that can be very contagious as well. So, and you're right, the old way is easier. It's very expedient. You just tell people what to do, and they often do it, but you don't get the
For some period of time, right?
for
Until
some
they,
period with that background sabotage going on,
yeah.
looking for that other job. So when you think about your staff and what challenges you guys have gone through, are there any tools or any situations that you've been in where it was really challenging, but you came out on the other side of it?
Oh, I can
Yeah.
think of one.
Go
Go ahead,
ahead.
Nick.
So, Mike, I'll take part of this here. I recall a time. This was relatively early on when we started the culture model, and we had an employee that was good in certain things, right, and had some skills, but really wasn't taking the culture initiative seriously. And the person had a responsibility to get some of the work done in the modules, and he was completely on the other side of the chart, and just came back with yeah, I'll see if I can get to it, to me, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm one of the founding partners here, right? You're telling me. It was really hard to take that and not react, right? And so I think being able to use even some of the simple tool, healthy venting, right? And be able to go and talk to maybe Mike or one of the other leaders and say, wow, this just happened, and I just need to talk to somebody about it and help figure out how to handle that. Um,
Mhm.
Ultimately, the person did not adopt our culture, and is no longer with the company, right? I mean, there's your consequences. So it was just really interesting thing for me to experience, because it was hard as a business owner to hear one of your team members basically tell you to go buzz off, right?
Right, right. And it's interesting because there is a resistance in people at times to being that responsible. It's easier for just tell me what to do than
Mhm.
when they are transferred that responsibility to them. So I can tell by the words you guys are using, about healthy venting, or he's on this side of the chart, that you have been retaining what you've learned and you're using it. Do you have evidence that some of the people in your company have also been retaining and using what they're learning, and any stories on that?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite, one of my favorite tools, I have many, but one of my favorite tools is the 8 values that build trust.
Yeah.
And I hear from time to time where people have conflict and they approach that person and they use that tool to help resolve their conflict. And the beautiful thing about that is on some level, it takes the emotion out of the equation. You never get rid of it, but it makes it more of a conversation around sharing responsibility. We use that a lot, sharing responsibility in the relationship. It's a two-way street, and we need to understand where we've gotten off track. And that tool, and again, I hear people saying, I need to sit down with that person, I need to go through the 8 values that build trust in order to resolve that conflict. And I hear that all the time, actually, because we do our monthly mentoring, where it's not counseling, it's not
Right.
coaching, it's more, how are you doing with LifeWorks and implementing our culture? And many times, in those mentoring conversations, we identify where someone is maybe not what we call at a 10 with another person. And that's the answer is you sit down with that person and you go through the 8 values that build trust. And that helps, again, depersonalize it and put you on a path towards resolving, that conflict.
I love that you have said it kind of pulls the emotion out of it, because it is what I like to think of it is it's like taking the head and the heart, the emotions and the critical thinking, and marrying them. So it is like a science. I think that people have these ideas about soft skills or whatever, there's nothing soft about them. But it does require a certain amount of willingness to go through that specific kind of process of asking, are we at a 10? I was working with somebody the other day and they said that they were at a 1 with another person. And what always happens when somebody's at a 1 or a 2 is they can only see one thing they're doing wrong, and the other person is doing all 8 wrong. So that whole
Yeah,
idea of puffing up our virtues and puffing up their faults is so obvious when it's gone that low. So it sounds like your people have taken to heart that trustworthiness is foundational and it is priority. Do you find them
absolutely.
do you ever find them coming to you and you saying, "Wait, you got the tools to handle this," or what, how does that happen much?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. There are times where, depending on the severity of the conflict, one of us might be involved in, helping facilitate that conversation. And that's okay. Ideally, they can resolve it on their own, but some people, who may not be maybe newer, right, and not as well versed in our tools and our culture may need some assistance from time to time. And it's a very, it's a facilitating kind of a thing that we do, but also there are many people who are, very comfortable in sort of fostering their own conversations around those 8 values that build trust.
Good, good. Do you ever send people to somebody more seasoned to learn something that's in the model, maybe, as opposed to giving them the answer, but just asking for support for them? Does that happen very much?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Nick you can comment on this. I know blueprints, one of the areas where you
Yeah.
help out quite a bit.
I love the blueprint process. I found it extremely easy for me, right? And I dialed in on that very, very quickly. The approach you took in the modules, Judy, to come to that blueprint, to that, what's your purpose in this world, made it really easy for me to identify, my purpose. And I got so much joy out of that that I actually really enjoy helping others come up with it. I worked with one of our employees for several years trying to help her, get through figuring out really what her purpose is. And it took quite a while, but she was so excited when she finally landed on it. Excuse me. That's an area that I really, really enjoy. I get to live my purpose every day. I am so grateful for that exercise, because prior to that, I really didn't even think about, what's my purpose, you know? So,
Yeah, yeah,
and we do have people in the office that are maybe a little bit better versed in some of the tools, but we really work towards having everybody understand the tools, and an open door for anybody who's confused about them to talk to many people in the office that know them well.
good, good. Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was just thinking about, we have someone who's like knows intrinsics inside and out when it comes to the different colors and personality styles, et cetera. And that's a luxury to have, right? Someone who really understands how those colors fit together
Yeah.
and how people work with one another. And I'm sure there are other areas as well where we've got pockets of like specialization or expertise or interest, right? Like Nick loves the blueprint.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nick, I wish I could hire you part-time to help with that, because the blueprint is the thing that most people resist.
Yeah, well, and they struggle with it
Yeah,
too.
they struggle with it and it's scary to them. We even had where we used to have it when we first met you all in month 4, and then we moved it to the end of the program because people were so
Right,
like reactive. And now we make it the very first thing, because if they really need to be able to move through their fears about who they are. And I remember one of your leaders who is no longer there. His was to cause greatness. And he said, I can't do that. That's what the Dalai Lama does. And I said, well, who says you can't be like the Dalai Lama? So
right,
for a long time, he would say, I can observe greatness, but that's very different than causing greatness.
right.
I really appreciate that you like that tool, and that you stay with people through that process until they do feel it click in. Because there is something, I always tell people, it's just being your best self, whoever you are at your best.
Yeah.
So, Nick, just to ask you this, how do you think you guys have been able to keep these initiatives alive over 10 years?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been an evolution. We've gone through many iterations. We have worked really hard to bring the team in to help us figure out how to keep our culture model alive. And we've tried many, many different things. A big challenge for us is ramping up a new employee, right? I mean, that's a lot of information to get into them in
Mhm.
a relatively short amount of time, so that and there were times when we would span it across 12 months, right? And they've been here for a year before they got to the end of the training, and it really became difficult because the rest of the team had already been through it, and we're talking about concepts that they had never heard yet. Um, so we constantly are trying different ways of making it easier for new hires to come on board and get trained up in a relatively reasonable amount of time. Um, and one of the beauties, I think, that I see now is that we have enough people that embrace our culture, and they are the ones kind of leading the charge now, right? As the partners, it's not all on us. We've got people that are really in there helping drive that culture, and how we present it to the employees, and how we train on it. And we train on it, basically every week. And our mentoring, I think, is huge as well, right? And having a mentoring schedule, and we all mentor each other. I get mentored by everybody in the company just as well as mentoring them.
Yeah, which breaks down so many barriers. And there was something you just said about, oh, about people just kind of naturally, organically taking on certain aspects of the culture because you need to spend your time building the business,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
you guys have increased your, how many people that work for you? I'm assuming that it translates into increased revenues.
yeah.
So, what do you think leaders miss out on, either of you, by not considering the health of their workplace culture and the emotional intelligence of the people that they have in their workplace?
Well, one of the early things, Judy, I remember was, I grew up in a professional environment where you walked in the office and you put your game face on,
Hmm.
and that just seems so unnatural. And we've really turned that around to where myself and everyone else, for the most part, feels comfortable, right? Being themselves in the office. You spend so much time at work. Why not make that work experience a comfortable, enjoyable, psychologically safe experience? And that starts, at the leadership level all the way through the rest of the organization. So we can talk about financials and growth, and that's great, but the personal satisfaction and just the general enjoyment of being around one another and being at the office and interacting with each other is just a joy unto itself. And sure, there have been financial, rewards as a result of that too, but I think the sort of the relationship side of things and just the general sort of camaraderie and comfortableness we have around one another is really the bigger benefit. And as a result, people are doing work that they love to do and are aligned and we're working together. So it's a wonderful feeling.
That's so great because you're focusing on, yes, profit matters, but it's not the whole of it. And it's that joy, it's that fulfillment in life. You guys know recently my nephew died unexpectedly, and I wrote an article from it yesterday that I submitted, and it was called, "What is success to you? What does success mean to you?" Because we get so caught up in what we think the world wants us to be and do. And you are describing, Mike, the real success, which is being comfortable with each other, feeling safe with each other, being able, and I do think it turns into long-standing loyalty, long-standing tenure from what I see in your team. And also, I believe more productivity and performance from them. So, yeah, I love it that you're describing what real success is.
Yeah, and I feel like for me, as I look at what I define success, I want to enjoy every single day of my life. And you can't do that in an environment that is toxic and full of gossip and all of that. And so the like soft value for me is that I love our team. And you think about that when we go out and we start talking to prospective clients, one of the things I mention when I'm talking to them is we have a rock solid culture model. We work really hard on our culture. That's part of when I talk to them about our services and our team is the fact that we invest heavily into our culture. And that to me, I think is important. Um, and it's also something we talk to prospective new hires when we're interviewing them and finding out how they feel culture is to them because we feel strongly about it. And sometimes we may not choose them because they just don't get it. But most of the time, we're hearing, "Oh, I love that you have this program because we didn't have it at our last place. We had an employee that literally his previous boss was throwing pens at him.
Oh,
I mean, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How do you want to work in an environment like that? You know?
yeah. Yeah.
So,
You have your when you talk to your customers about the culture, do they say much about that? Do you and what is it about that that makes you feel proud when you have those conversations? Nick, particularly you.
yeah, I think I think that a lot of people they may not react like verbally, but you can see that they're interested in the fact that we actually are putting an emphasis on our culture, right?
Yeah.
And probably in the back of their minds, sometimes I think their cogs are spinning and going, "Wow, we probably should do that here," right? Because the culture is not so great. So I think it's a little bit of an eye opener for them. And I really I think that the benefit is that I can walk into a prospective client and just have that confidence that not only is our team rock solid and really good at what they do, but they all are really invested in our company. And when they're invested in our company, as much as we're invested in them, right, our employees, uh, it makes a prospective client feel that they're going to get well taken care of.
Yes, yes. How about you, Mike? Have you received any feedback from either your people or your customers, your staff, that make you feel like, wow, this was worth it. This is worth it.
We're in many ways in the tech support business, right? And I always say none of our clients woke up this morning excited to call us because their computer doesn't work, right? Like that's probably not a thought that goes through one of our clients' heads. But at the end of the day, technology is complicated and sometimes people need help. And what I can say is, without commenting specifically on, say, some of the culture terms and tools and so forth, I can just see how our clients, when they have to interact with us for support, how their satisfaction with those interactions has gone through the roof as far as satisfaction goes. And that is really a testament to our team working together, to our team understanding what the client's needs are, being responsive to those needs, listening, asking things like, is there anything else I can help you with? Knowing that client many times is in a situation of need, right? Many times it's emotional and they're in pain, right? On some level because they need the technology to work so they can get their work done and follow through on their responsibilities and the commitments that they've made. And our team recognizes that and they're there for them. They show up, right? And they're there to help them get through that, as opposed to, I could say maybe there was a time when we would have to deal with a client, somebody on our help desk would deal with a client, and they were as frustrated as the client, right? Why do I have to deal with this situation? And I think that while it's hard to completely connect the dots there, just the sense and the feeling I have of the caring that happens and the understanding and putting themselves sort of in the perspective of the client, a lot of that has to do with the culture change that we've gone through and the concepts that we've learned. And I mean, it's really amazing. I can't even explain or quantify how awesome our support is now, with the ability to, solve problems quickly, put the clients at ease, and let them get back to their day and get their work done.
I love it. I never thought about it. It's almost like you guys have the role of being a bill collector or something. It's not an easy place because they're calling already feeling afraid and
Yeah,
frustrated. But
absolutely.
this is the way I think in terms of connecting the dots. When your people don't have as much stress and burnout, when they have the space within them to feel safe themselves, I think that allows them to bring a stronger reassurance maybe to those clients. At least that's what I see happening, is that they don't have those impediments within themselves of their own stress and burnout and fear that will otherwise be there in the space with them. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and one more thing, Judy, on that. You think about that, think about somebody on the help desk. If they're not a 10 with the rest of their team and they're all sitting in the room together there, do you think their reaction to the client's problems is going to be different? If they're, infighting with the rest of their team, if they don't have that relationship built with the rest of their team, I don't think their service delivery is going to be nearly as good.
Yeah, yeah, it's all hand in hand.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever had any internal difficulties that just didn't seem to be resolving very quickly, or is everybody pretty good about doing it quickly now when they have an issue?
In what manner? I'm just,
Like maybe they're at each other, like you said, they're not at a 10. Are there challenges that you thought, geez, nothing seems to be working, or are most of them just getting worked through?
one thing that's really interesting, I think, there are still people that are resistant, right, to the program, and I think you're going to have that no matter what or where. Eventually, if they are too resistant, then they probably typically would just no longer be with the company.
Mhm.
But I think through the mentoring process, and I've actually had this conversation with one of our other employees, when they start to go through that mentoring process and they're actually starting to understand uh, that it's a safe space, right? And that this is not some, voodoo magic type stuff that we're trying to sell. Uh, then you can see just in their posture, right, and their body language that they start to open up and start to accept it and say, "Oh, well, this wasn't really nearly as bad as what I was thinking it is," and you start to see a higher level of adoption. You know,
Yeah, it's almost like people are so used to getting in trouble
yeah,
that they don't
right,
they
right.
don't really feel like they can relax into support. So, but one of the things we always say is a misbehaving person is a discouraged person. So you guys went through the pandemic. You've been through lots of ups and downs, maybe even right now with AI. What are the things that help you keep people encouraged and purpose focused?
That's a great question. I would say, um, it comes back to the basics when it comes to things like the personal responsibility chart, right? Like that is a great tool for working through situations where there's uncertainty and unknowns and stress and anxiety.
Yeah,
Going back to, the old saying, what am I feeling and what do I want?
right.
And we do, as a course of business, we have a weekly staff meeting, and in a lot of our meetings, we're refreshing on some of these tools. And that sort of refresh process and constantly keeping it top of mind really helps in and making people aware, right, of their feelings and how they're dealing with different situations. And that's just one example I can think of, especially during the pandemic, where we all left the office and we were working remotely. It was sort of a touchstone, right, to make sure we were staying in communication and being part of the decision making process and being personally responsible. That was all very important to kind of keep that top of mind.
I love it that you're talking about intentionally keeping it top of mind, because I think there's been so many, literally centuries of conditioning and programming in people about what's safe and what isn't safe. And I always look at it, the saddest thing I think is people don't really trust their own power. When you say, what am I feeling? What do I want? Sometimes the first thing you want is to punch somebody in the nose, that you have to go deeper. Well, wait a minute, that's not going to meet my blueprint purpose, until you get to that. What do I really want? Because usually when we're angry, it's something that is trying to teach us what we want, not what we don't want. So I love it that you guys consciously, proactively work to keep all of this top of mind, because that's the only way people are going to own their tasks and really support each other. So, do you find that the mentoring has been something that has helped you personally? And is that ever hard to be mentored by an employee?
I love it. Um, I'll give you a quick little story. There was a point where I was not a 10 with somebody in the company. And I was being mentored by an employee. And as we stepped through the 8 values that build trust, I had scored myself much lower than the other person.
Hmm.
Right? That's a bit of an eye opener, right? I was not staying in my own backyard.
Hmm.
And it really, I found out I was not being disclosing. because I wasn't having that conversation with the person that I was not a 10 with. You
Yeah.
know, we all have fear of that, right? You have a fear of you know, being disclosing because you fear the confrontation. And the goal around the mentoring is really to help people shed that fear and realize that this is just conversations, right? A lot of this is the tools really help you learn how to have an open and honest conversation with another person.
You
And
know, sorry, Nick, I
go
didn't
ahead.
realize. Well, I was just going to say that fear it's mutual. I think employees think the employers are not afraid. And the employers think that the staff, they don't realize how afraid the staff is, but you're all afraid. That's
Sure. Yeah.
why it is, and it's helpful for people to know that. But I can't tell you how many leaders don't mix with their employees. They don't even want to mix with it with us. We finally got to the point where we don't really compromise on that. If you won't mix the levels, we won't do it. Because if you don't, you're missing that whole piece of mutual understanding and mutual safety. And that's what I hear you describing
Yeah.
is that
Yeah. That's psychological safety, right?
yeah, you still feel afraid, but you do
Yeah.
it anyway. And then the more
Yeah.
you do it, the less you so I know I
Yeah.
kind of cut you off. What else were you going to say on that? Anything in
I think that the you know, the ability to have a conversation with somebody without it being a shouting match or something like that. Um, you know, the beauty of the mentoring and honestly, if you could do this with the person you're not a 10 with directly, step through those 8 values that build trust, people can see where you're struggling and they can also tell you where they're struggling with you, right? And you've realized that there's just some things that need to be tweaked. It's not that all's lost, right? It's not that, hey, we hate your guts or I hate your guts and you hate my guts kind of thing.
yeah.
Usually it's more of a surface level thing. You've you know told me 6 times you were going to get this done and you didn't,
Hmm.
right? So I don't feel that you're following through on your commitments. Or, you know, I found out from somebody else, which is sad because it's gossip, that you're really upset with me about this, that, or the other thing, right? Well, you're not being very disclosing, right? We can
Yeah.
have that conversation. Don't be afraid to come talk to me if you got a problem with me. And I mean that's the mind trust, right? It's
Mhm.
very simple. So just having that open and honest communication is a huge part of the culture.
Yeah, and it only takes one side to bring it all forward.
Yeah.
Regardless if you're the one that finds out somebody's been talking about you. Do you think that most of your people are maintaining a high level of trust with each other and with you guys as leaders?
I
Mike,
would
I'm
s-
gonna just chime in real quick here.
yeah,
Sorry.
go for it.
I think there's what's interesting, and I just did some analysis on this mentally. Um, there's a high level of trust within each department, and you know, the service team, I think there's a real high level of trust amongst them. Account management, high level trust, right? All of the different departments uh, have a high level of trust within them. I think we still have work to do on interdepartmental trust and trust with all those departments with us as owners, but we constantly work on it. Excuse me, and we are always striving to build more of that trust with everybody and working towards getting the interaction between the different departments at a higher level of trust. That's a concept I've just recently kind of had a conversation with somebody about, and I thought it was really
Yeah.
interesting.
It's still got a little bit of that silo stuff
A
happening.
little bit, yeah, but we're working on it. Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that well said, Nick. I totally agree with what you just stated there. It's interesting as leaders, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what's going on because I feel like many times you're the last to know with there may be an issue or there might be a problem. People aren't always forthcoming with negative news or problems, and that can be a challenge sometimes, I would say, to really sort of keep your finger on the pulse of do we trust each other and are there issues, are there challenges? Mentoring is a great way, right, that we have where we get an opportunity to interact with folks across the organization And that helps us keep the finger on the pulse of what's going on out there from a relationship perspective. But at the end of the day, you still sometimes don't know, right? When you're in those mentoring sessions and is somebody's not at a 10 with somebody, are they going to tell you that? And that might be too painful for them, right? To walk through that process. And we know that that happens, right? Sometimes people are, maybe not comfortable doing that. I would say one of the best things that we've ever done, Judy, is your strategic alignment survey, where we can get real feedback and an understanding of where we are on the 8 values that build trust from a sort of anonymous reporting perspective. I think that's one of the best ways to understand where you are. I mean, from where I sit, I would tell you, yes, I feel like we have high levels of trust, certainly across the leadership team. And I think Nick's right, within the teams. But again, it's a hard thing really to know for sure in a quantifiable way of where we stand. But I do feel like we talk about gossip and we talk about cynicism, and certainly that's, I would say, at an all-time low
Yeah.
based on doing this for 10 years. That has really gone down because people call each other out on it now, right? We've been doing it so long. You're violating the mind trust, right? I mean, that's a thing that happens here,
Yeah.
So we've made lots of progress, but it's a journey, not a destination.
It's right. And you know what? It's kind of like maintenance on a car or going to get your 6-month checkup at the doctor. You guys have been willing to do things like the strategic alignment survey. And I remember, Mike, one time you were I asked you all to go to each other and say, are we at a 10? And I remember you saying somebody told you that they were at a 9 with you, and you were kind of like, ooh, that's kind of hard to hear, even if it was just a 9. But
Yeah,
it was
sure.
also a relief because then you could figure out what was going on. And
Right.
that's why I love it that Jack Canfield would always ask his wife, "Are we at a 10?" And if she wasn't, he would say, "What's going on?" And then they could correct it real quick. That's real maintenance. And I remember one time, Mike, you asked somebody, or you asked one of your employees, because I was sitting in on your mentoring, what would make you leave? And they gave you an honest answer. And you were like, wow, what do I do with that? But you knew then it was like out in the open. So I love it that you guys are really, when you say, we're confronting each other, we're holding each other accountable, you're really holding yourselves accountable to making sure that you go and have the conversations when you do. And that's beautiful. So let's see where we are on time. We only have about 5 minutes left. So um, I have other questions to ask you, but is there anything in particular that we have not talked about right now that you feel we need to?
I think,
And if you
one of the beauties is that stepping back and seeing kind of the team run with it is one of the most freeing things, right? As you build a company, you start to build structure in so that you are freed up to do, more of the strategic thinking and things like that. And seeing how in the beginning when we started 10 years ago, it was basically, the partners were the ones having to drive it all the time and doing a ton of the work on that. Seeing the employees doing it now and just having that overview of it and being able to kind of stay involved without being the ones driving it, to me is just a wonderful thing to see.
it's almost like being a good parent
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and parenting yourself at the same time.
Yes.
So let's see here. What else can we talk about? We've talked about so much. I remember one time, Mike, you and I went to lunch and you said, I hear people talk all the time about healthy culture, but they act like there's no real way to go about doing it. And you just wanted to yell, like, of course there's a way. So when when you see the resistance that others have to changing their culture, what is it that you would like to tell them?
Well, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but it starts at the top.
Hmm.
I think and I love what you said earlier about, if the top's not going to be involved in the mentoring, across the board, or, they're delegating culture change, right, to somebody else on their team, further down in the organization, that's a big red flag. I think it really does have to start at the top. There has to be, that buy-in, a willingness, sort of an ability to be, um, open yourself up, right, to what's possible from a change perspective. And many times that means changing yourself. And I went through that personally. And it can be a struggle, right? Because typically leaders, I used to feel like I had it all figured out, right? I knew what we needed to do and how it needed to be done. And I've got to, check off culture change on my to-do list, right? It just doesn't work that way. You've really got to be bought in and make it a priority, not only today, but, forever.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are great. Those are great thoughts, because we're right at the end of the show, and it sounds like what you're saying to people are, don't rush anything. Just know it's a process and know that it's worth it. Are there other words of wisdom you would like to leave with our listeners? I'd love to hear from both of you on that as we wrap up this episode.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say, I kind of already said it, but culture change, for me, is really about introspection. It's about, looking at, your own sort of perspective on things, and being willing to open up and look at new ideas, new concepts, new ways um, of managing your organization, of leading your organization, and realizing that, that change, while it can be challenging and can be painful, but on the other side, the benefits are well worth the investments.
Thank you. How about you, Nick? What words of wisdom would you leave?
I think it's the having the process helps, right? Because if we were to try and put this all together ourselves, we'd be a mess. You've invested a ton of time in learning these processes and tools and putting it all together for us to be able to digest that in a simple way, and giving us a process to continue it on for forever. And I just think that just like a business can't typically do IT themselves, bring the expert in to help, right? Bring them in to do the things that you're not an expert in. I don't know too many people that are experts in culture. So I think really investing in somebody that can help you along it would be very helpful.
Well, I love it that you both are role models as transformational leaders. And I mean that from the bottom of my soul. You really are. You live it. You don't just talk it, you walk it. And I think you're an inspiration to all of the people listening. And I hope that they reach out. We've got all your information on our site now, on the Transformation Network, because they need to have that encouragement that you have brought today. Thank you so much for being two of my favorite positive ego, wonderful, amazing transformational coaches. Thank you very much.
Things.
Thank you, Judy. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
You've been listening to When Everyone Wins, where we're shifting power over and under to power within and between. I'm Judy Ryan, your Transformation Talk Radio host. Tune in each second and fourth Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time to learn new concepts and tools and listen to conversations I have with thought leaders and change agents. You'll also see real-world applications of what I'm covering so that you experience the power of the concepts and tools I share. In each episode, I bring you my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWorks Systems. I invite you to call in with your unique stories and questions. The path to ensure that everyone wins depends on our ability as people to create a life we love and help others do the same. For more information, visit lifeworksystems.com.